Okay, let's get started. So welcome to the practical applications of financial wellness session. We're glad everyone was able to join us as we dive deeper into the financial wellness section of the DBSA Wellness Wheel by improving our financial literacy. My name is Maria Margaglione. I'm the programs director here at DBSA. And today we have Ro Lindo with us to talk about financial literacy. Ro is a finance executive who is very passionate about helping others work through financial challenges. We're all grateful for people like you, Ro, who are excited about doing this. He will talk more about his experience in just a moment. But before we dive in, if you were in the opening session and you heard Jason in his testimonial talk about how talk therapy and medicine may not be enough, and we couldn't agree more. DBSA believes that wellness is achieved by looking at the whole person. So we created a tool to help individuals who live with a mood disorder see a complete picture of the progress they've already made on their wellness journey. And financial wellness is included in this whole picture. So what we are looking to do today, we're hoping that you'll walk away with how you can prevent problematic spending that may be related to symptoms of a mood disorder, tips on managing a budget, and practical steps to improve your financial literacy. Just one housekeeping note, down during the session, if you have a question down, I believe it's at the bottom of your toolbar, there's a Q&A box and you can put your questions in there. After Ro's presentation, we will get to as many as possible, time permitting. So thanks for being here with us, Ro. We're excited and probably a little nervous, or maybe that's just me, to learn more about financial literacy. So I am going to stop sharing and let you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria. I think all of us are actually just a tad bit nervous at this point, but I think regardless of what happens, if we're able to really just learn from each other, that's a win-win for everybody. So thanks everyone for joining. Just sort of wanted to sort of do a little bit of introduction of who I am as an individual. I think the most important thing that I want to sort of share with people is that, you know, I know Maria talked about who I am as a results finance executive, but more importantly, I tend to style myself more of a teacher, a guide, and a father to two really beautiful kids who sort of take up my entire life these days. But after what happened with COVID, I'm happy to get them out the house so they can actually go back to school, quite honestly. I think one of the things to understand is that in terms of the skill set that I bring to the conversation is that I have taught and teach students at different levels as it relates to math and economics. But more importantly, I have worked with families and individuals and even small businesses to really understand what financial literacy is about. And it does mean something different to everybody. And I think that's if you take away nothing from this conversation, I think the most important thing to take away from the conversation is that each person's situation is unique. And because each person's situation is unique, what makes sense for them and how they interact from a financial literacy perspective is all dependent on what are the drivers in their respective lives. And is therefore the problems and solutions that are being sort of spec'd for you is always customized. So there's no one size fits all. There's no right or wrong. There's just what is your circumstances and how we can effectively work to get in solutions that works for you, not just as a one-off, but as a sustainable way. So without further ado, I sort of want to sort of ground the conversation with, you know, 3 quotes which I felt sort of like speak to what financial literacy is all about. So the first one is, there's really no wealth like knowledge and there's no poverty like ignorance. Essentially, we're really talking to the fact that a lot of us just don't know, including myself to begin with. I realized that a lot of things are out there, but we simply don't know. The other thing that we need to clear about, and the other quote is really important, is if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. But quite frankly, if you're willing to learn stuff, no one can stop you. And my personal favorite from one of my favorite artists, Bob Marley, it's about emancipating yourself from mental slavery. None but yourself can free your mind. it really speaks to what this is about, that there's no barriers out there. You stand in your own way of really learning. Nothing can prevent the learning if you want it to happen. So what does that mean on a big picture? The problem that we face is that at different stages in our lives, either as a young adult or college graduates or adults or professionals, we face different things. And some of this might be very familiar to each of you guys, but in high school, when you're getting out of high school and getting ready to get into college, there's all these new experiences, new influences. You'll find that, credit card people start reaching out to you and say, hey, sign up for this credit card. This is great. And the whole idea of having a credit card to get stuff immediately is a nice little thing for you, but there's always consequences. And then when you get into college and you're in college for a while, it goes from having a conversations about getting a GPA to really talk about, what you're going to spend, what you're going to buy, how you're going to spend your money. And as you sort of grow older as an individual, you start facing, things like bills and a static income. So you start talking less about what you're going to buy and more thinking about rent and grocery and car payments. And families start to think about, how am I going to take care of my loved one? Because, suddenly I need to take him to the doctor and the doctor has diagnosed him with X and it's going to cost us a lot of money. And then there's insurance. And then as adults and you sort of become professionals, you're thinking about house payments. You start thinking about, how do I take care of my kids? You start thinking about, what is the cost of ongoing care for my loved ones as they interact with the broader world, and what does that mean for them? So we're faced with a conundrum. There's a ton of knowledge that is out there for a lot of people. It's just there. You can get it on TV, you can get it from articles, online, getting it from your doctor, getting it from your family, getting it from your friends. But nobody really sort of pulls all the information together in a way that makes sense for you as an individual. It's just a lot of things coming at you. And that conundrum is what is the biggest challenge for most people. Just this reams of information sort of dissuade people from actually digging deeper and informing themselves, because there's just so much of it out there. So you might ask yourself the question, do I need help? Am I one of the person who actually financial literacy can help with? And I'll say this to you, that each of us as individual, we have our wants, we have our needs, we have our priorities, and we have some choices, right? So if you're a person who is just a person who is like truly like a rock star when it comes to inventing stuff, you have these great ideas, you want to turn these ideas into action, then financial literacy is for you. If you're an adult that's just starting your journey, you might have a lot of debt, you might have a lot of new expenses, you might not have enough income, you might be trying to figure out how to pay for the care that your loved one needs, and trying to figure out what is the insurance plan that you need to sign up for that gives you the right coverage. Is these things covered by insurance? These are all questions that you're asking yourself. This means that this financial literacy class is for you. And the idea here is that we're going to move the conversation to, how does that really apply within my day-to-day life? Essentially, the path which I recommend for everyone is, there's a lot of information, as I mentioned, and all these information sources are very important. What we will do is effectively identify these sources and figure out who we can learn from. You can learn from your family. You can learn from your friends. You can learn from your own experiences. And then with a coach or a mentor in an individual session or a group session, depending on what the family represents, you can learn about what your specific situation is. And one of the things you can get from this can be, where's all my money going? I call it money leakages. Or how do I live below my means? These are all simple questions that we probably struggle with every day, or I know I struggle with it sometimes, even though I'm the person here giving, because this is something that doesn't just apply to Jill or Jane out there. This applies to my mom, my friend, my sister, my son, my daughter. I have a daughter going into college. It applies to her. My nephew is going into university. It does apply to him, or he's just getting into the work world. These are all skill set that applies to everyone, and it helps us to really frame up what we should do as individuals and as family. So what I'm actually advocating for is really a holistic way of actually addressing this. It's using a person such as myself in a coach and mentor capacity to leverage the resources which is out there. In the case of, we find information, interpret the information, we share the information in a way that is easily consumed and applies to your very specific situation. And once you get this knowledge, this is the knowledge that helps you to stop being so afraid of what is out there. It helps you to stop wondering and pondering on what to do and how to do it. And it also gets you off the sidelines of your life and actually taking charge of what's really going on within your life to really understand how to go about addressing some of these things. I like this slide for two reasons. This slide captures in a very simple way how it all works together. And it also captures very clearly that this is not just a one-time thing. This is really a circular flow of life. And it really speaks to what we're here talking about today, which is financial wellness. Wellness is not just something that you do once and then it's finished. Wellness is a way of life. It's a way of living. And in this case, what I'm advocating for from a financial wellness perspective is you learn things, then you get some insights from it, you practice it, then you analyze what actually happened, and then whatever you learn from that, you start the cycle all over again. And for me, the very concept of the wheel is really depicted here, as it really shows you that everything is connected and interconnected, and it starts again and again. And if you break any of this process, you can start anywhere in the process. If you practice it and you're not 100% sure, you can go back to getting the insights. If you're not sure about the insights, you can go back to, what did I learn? Where did I get this from? And it really helps you as an individual to frame how you approach this. It also helps you as an individual to really take small chunks. If you have a small issue to work with, you have a simple framework that helps you, and you can effectively work through this again and again, either as an individual, as a family, or with somebody to guide you. So all those pretty words and all that stuff, what it all really comes down to? This is the real rubber meeting the road, right? When you think about financial wellness and literacy, there's really 4 key pillars. And these are words that is very familiar to everyone, I'm sure, on the webinar today. This is not new words. They're all there. We have talked about them many times. But there are really 4 core elements of it. There's budgeting, there's savings, there's investment, and there's debt. And within each of these 4 pillars, there's really subsets, which are really important. Within the budgeting pillar, we're going to talk about needs versus want. And I'll just take this moment to say, within this presentation, we're going to have a much more detailed conversation and exercise about needs versus want, which I'm actually looking forward to, because it is actually helping us to take these nice words and pretty presentation and actually apply them in our day-to-day life, which is very important, because this is not just about a pretty presentation. This is really about, how can I use this for me? And I'm available to actually take questions, and I would encourage everyone to really ask anything, because ultimately the idea here is that we're all here to learn, we're all here to share, we're all here to really continue along the journey that leads to financial wellness. The focus of today's actual presentation is going to be the budget. And I want to start out by saying that budgeting is the foundation of the wellness journey. Without a budget, everything else sort of falls apart. And as you can see, budget has 2 very critical components: income and expenses. What is your budget? The budget gives you an opportunity to really take control of your money. The real thing is, you need to figure out as an individual what exactly you're putting together a budget to achieve. What sort of goal you have that requires money? Do you want to save money for emergencies? Do you want to set aside money to buy something critical like a car? Do you have a pretty large medical bill that you would like to pay over time in small chunks? Do you want to put together a plan because you want to take the family to a nice vacation, and you just want to make sure that you actually pull together the money for that, which is all things which are not normal for everyone. The key to this budget is to identify what is your income. Where's your income coming from? And there's a bunch of places where you get income, and it is all different for everyone. Some people get a wages and salary. Other people have their own business. Some people have pension. There's unemployment benefits. There's assistance from the public. There's social security. Sometimes you even get help from your family and friends. All of those areas are sources of income. And it is very important to be very clear what they are as they help to put together the budget that you're thinking about. As with everything in income, the other side of that conversation is going to be your expenses. And this is where you have probably the most control over your day-to-day. There's two types of expenses, and it is important for us to be thoughtful about them because how we tackle them is very important in terms of our wellness journey. There's certain fixed expenses that we as individuals have each day. We have a rent or mortgage. We have utilities. We have to pay for a car in some cases. These are expenses which every single month, you're paying a similar amount each month. You know it's coming February, March, April, May, June, July. So you plan for that. But then there is the flexible expenses. And this is where we as individuals have a lot more control over how we spend the money, because this is where we make a lot of mistakes as individuals. We sometimes consider our flexible expenses as fixed expenses, and that shouldn't be the case. The very concept of flexible means that amount of spending changes on any given month. If I spend $400 in clothes in February, that doesn't mean I'm going to spend $400 in clothes in March and May and June. If we're doing that, then that's an opportunity for us. The second thing that you need to understand is that some people might have flexible expenses, which they may consider fixed expenses. And the reality is that there's a simple way to look at your fixed expense. Your fixed expense cannot be changed easily. Your fixed expense, whenever you miss those fixed expense, it causes an issue. That's one of the easiest way to look at it. It could cause an issue such as a late fee. It could be having your utilities cut off. It could even be a legal action. Those are expenses which you're obligated to pay every single month or at a time which is already agreed on. Whereas your flexible expenses, if you don't pay your flexible expenses, the only person who is inconvenienced is you. There is no late fee, there is no legal action, you control that. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what these expenses are, and at a later date, we'll probably have this exercise if you actually want to get into it more. But these are some examples of all the expenses that you will have. It's not very exhaustive. People might have others, but it is your rent, your food, your car payment, your clothing, utilities, household items, credit card, education expense, insurance payment, transportation expense, savings. And I would like to pause a minute on savings and answer the question, why would savings be an expense? This is money that I'm saving for myself. Now, here's a little trick that everyone needs to take note of when it comes to savings. You have to treat savings like an expense because if you are trying to build disciplined saving habits, it means it's money that you don't have to spend each month. Therefore, if you treat your savings as a potential monthly expense, you will just automatically set aside money for savings, and it just goes away and you don't need to think about it, with the benefit that your saving accounts just keep getting larger and larger because you're treating it as an expense. I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but that's exactly what it is. Your savings is an expense each month because it is money you have to put aside. There's a very important thing that we need to know as individuals, and which is going to be very important to us when you think about financial wellness. It really speaks to something which is near and dear to me, which is our needs versus our wants. each of us have common things that we require and need to live. These are called our needs. Yeah, basic needs: food, water, shelter. But it is important for us to understand that our needs may be very different at different times in our life, such as when we retire, such as when we lose our job, maybe get sick, maybe we can't work. The needs at that time is very different when we are in the prime of our working life, when we're working and having a steady income. The other thing to think about is that besides our basic needs, we have other things that we like to do or buy. These extras, as they are called, makes our life a lot more enjoyable, very comfortable. They could be things like having a manicure, wearing designer clothes, going to the movies, having a phone. These are nice things. These are extras though, and we need to be very clear what it is that is needs. The other thing that we need to be very clear about is one person wants, maybe another person needs. For example, one person may need a cell phone to feel safe while traveling, while for another person, that could just be a want. We're going to go to an exercise a little bit later that really speaks about what are your needs versus your wants. And I want you to take some time to look at this, because at the very end of this presentation, we're going to come back to this. Maria and I are going to sort of go through this and sort of use it to kind of spark the conversation as to what do you consider to be a need versus a want, because that is at the very core of what you can view as practical execution to sort of help you in your wellness journey. Because everything within budget comes into these two categories, needs versus want. And if you're able to identify your needs separate from your wants, you're going to be making a huge step in actually putting together what your budget should look like. A couple of things. If you want to do some things to make sure that you're on top of your budget, there's three things to think about. You got to think about A, identifying your needs versus your wants. B, you got to figure out how to manage your expenses. And C, you got to figure out how to manage your income. All three together will help you to understand how to put your budget together. More importantly, it will help you to stay on top of your budget so that you don't feel like you're under pressure to do things that you don't need to do. But more importantly, you'll have a plan which will at least serve as a guide for you. So if you have more expenses than income, there's a couple of things you could do. You could A, cut back on some of those expenses. B, look at your flexible expenses first. C, check your fixed expenses. D, take a look at, is there any way for us to actually get more income? And E, take a look at, do I need to go tap into my savings? Do I need to save a little bit less to take care of my situation currently? Now, all of this, as I mentioned before, doesn't work for everyone. There's no one size fits all. And I think it is important for us to really remember that and recognize that your specific situation may call for some of this stuff. It may call for all of this stuff. The key thing that we need to be clear on here is that whatever approach you decide to take, it is something that needs to work for you and your family and your loved ones. So before we go into the exercise about needs versus wants, I'd like to share a story with you. It's a very fundamental story, and I'm pretty sure a couple of people can identify with this small story. I call it the Starbucks coffee story. A woman felt she deserved gourmet coffee from the local coffee shop 3 times a day. At $4 a cup, that's $12 a day. When she looked at how much she was actually spending on coffee every day, she made a decision to make her own coffee at home. She purchased the special creamers and she took a thermos to work. By doing this, she saved enough money to buy a monthly bus pass. Now, This is a true story. This is somebody that I worked with, and that's why I call it the Starbucks coffee. I know we love Starbucks. Everyone loves Starbucks or they love Dunkin' Donuts, but everybody loves the Java. I need it in the morning. You need it in the morning and in the afternoon. It's okay. I'm okay with that. The point of this entire story has always been, you don't need to give up the things that you love. You can still have the things that you love. How you go about it can be different. Because truly, what she's able to identify as the need is the coffee. That's what she needed. She didn't need Starbucks coffee, she just needed coffee. And not only did she just need coffee, she was able to get all the special creamers to make it just the way she loved it. And so she was able to, with a little bit of effort, make her coffee at home had enough in a thermos to last her for the 3 times she needs it for the day. And she was able to save money. So the moral of the story is, don't believe that making a budget means you got to give up the things you like. Just recognize that there's another way sometimes to get those things. And if you're willing to try another way, then I can guarantee you that not only will you maintain the lifestyle that you have, but you're going to feel so much better to know that not only did you get your coffee each day, but you're able to save money elsewhere. And that's the end of this presentation before we go into our exercise.
Great. Well, for those who don't know, Ro gave me this exercise and I did my homework before this presentation. And I said I would be willing to be vulnerable enough to tell everybody what my needs versus wants are. So however you want to direct this, Ro.
Okay, good. So first of all, let's thank Maria, because as she mentioned, there's a level of vulnerability that is here, which is important to understand, because most people don't necessarily would like to talk about their specific situations. And so I want to thank Maria for being bold enough to actually have this conversation. As I mentioned before, it is very important for us to really identify what is a true need versus a want. So one of the first questions I'm going to ask Maria is to just go down the list and just tell me what she considered to be her need versus her want. And then we're going to pick a few of these items and actually have a broader conversation about them. So let's start with the first. Is food a need or a want?
It's a need.
The washer and dryer, is that a food or a want?
Well, I wish I had one, but I definitely need a mechanical washer and dryer.
Okay. A magazine subscription.
That would be a want.
An iPhone or an Android phone?
This is the one you're going to argue with me about. I have a feeling. As far as a smartphone, I use a smartphone for more than just social media. Look at me, I'm already rationalizing. I use it on my commute to read books. I use it for my Google Docs for work. So let's get into it. What do you got to say?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that one. Let's just get into it, right? Because you said it. So one of the first things you started to do is, in your words, is to rationalize why you need it. And this is important for everyone to understand, that ultimately, whenever you start rationalizing something, that is your first indicator that what you consider to be a need is in fact a want. You don't need to rationalize your needs. You started out with food. It's a simple need. There was no rationalization. We need food to eat. But once you start to rationalize something, then is when you start understanding that, hey, maybe I need to take a second look at it, because perhaps it's not so much a need as I might think. So that's just the first thing. Let's go back to the washer and dryer. Why do you feel you need a washer and dryer?
Do you mean, so I live in an apartment and there's a washer and dryer in the basement. Or you're saying because I can't hand wash all of my clothes and sheets.
Okay, and there it is, right there, exactly that. Those are very practical, pragmatic reasons why you need a washer and dryer, because you cannot hand wash your clothes. But I would even say to you that while a washer and dryer may be a need for you, there's another person out there who don't have access to a washer and dryer, who is quite comfortably and washing their clothes. Now, those are people who exist like that, which is why I'd like to make it clear to people that one person needs could be another person wants. And it's just a matter of what your specific situation is. Let's keep going down the list. A satellite dish,
That would be a want.
okay? A concert tickets,
Want.
a cell phone.
Now, you said cell phone and not smartphone. Is there a difference in your list?
Yes, there is. So let's take the same conversation about the phone. I think one of the things we need to think about as individuals is, what do you need your phone to do? And not just ask that question, but truly answer it. If you need your phone to make calls, do you need a smartphone to do that?
No.
If you need your phone to take pictures, do you need a smartphone to do that?
Yes, I think
Do you
so.
need your phone for work, to read books, to really stay connected to social media? Do you need a smartphone to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's peel another layer to this conversation. Do you need an iPhone smartphone to do that?
Yes. You're going to tell me no.
No, but you're saying yes. But let's kind of ask the question. If I could tell you that an iPhone costs approximately $1,000, right?
Well, we might get to this later. I'm on the monthly plan, so
And
I
there
don't
you
know.
go. There you go. See,
Yeah.
just like that, you answered the question.
Mhm.
You don't realize that you're paying that for that phone, but that's exactly what you're paying for that phone on a monthly plan. Now, if what you really want is a smartphone to do the things you just described, do you also would accept the thought that there are smartphones out there that you can get absolutely free to do exactly what you just said?
I didn't know about that. And geez, does that point to what you were talking about earlier on ignorance and finding more information? I didn't know you could do that.
There you go. That's exactly my point. There's a lot of information out there, but not everyone have access to that information. Now, if you want the latest phone of 2021, it's not free, but a phone that is like a couple of years old that is still more than serviceable is actually free. And if you actually call your service provider, they will give you that phone really, really free. They have budget phones, they have mid-tier phones, and they have high-end phones, which quite frankly, they all do exactly the same thing. But we have been conditioned to want an iPhone. We have been conditioned to want the latest, the best. And what we don't recognize is that we are spending money that we don't need to spend to get something that we classified as a need. And it could be a need, but there's a way to satisfy that need without actually putting yourself into unnecessary monthly payments. Because what you're doing is taking on debt that you really don't need to. Let's go down the list. Designer clothes.
That's a want.
Childcare.
That would likely be a need if I had children.
Convenience food.
Want.
Eating out.
Want.
Insurance.
Need.
Church offering.
I'm sure that really depends on the person you're talking to. I would say that's a want. Others would.
Okay, I'll take that. It all comes back to what is specific for a person.
Mhm.
Let's have a comparison between a big screen TV and a TV set.
What, well, one is bigger. One is bigger. So a big screen TV would be a want.
What would be the difference between clothes and designer clothes?
The tag, the price tag. And yeah, you're asking the wrong person there. I am not into designer clothes for sure. But somebody else might have a rationalization for that, for sure.
And I think that's the point I'm trying to make for everyone to understand here, that the intent of budgeting is not to deny you the things that you like. The intent of budgeting is to make sure that is not only to be more informed so you can make smarter decisions, but it's also help you to understand that the idea of being of financial wellness is more about informed decision making so you can have peace of mind. And in order for you to become informed, A, you have to get the knowledge in a way that you can understand it. And B, you then need to go back and practice the insights that you get from that knowledge. And once you execute it, you see the benefits of it, and then you start again so that you keep building the right habits, you keep making sure that everything makes sense for you, and you do this again and again and again. And what you will find is that you may start in a place where some of your needs will very calmly shift into your wants column. And then sometimes some of your wants may also shift into your needs column because you have more clarity of what you truly need as an individual.
Yeah, these are, I love your bit about the wheel, the pattern of this, the learning. To be even more vulnerable, I am someone who has lived experience with the mood disorder, and I have had one heck of a path to financial wellness. I'm finally at a place that I'm starting to learn. And I think one of the things, again, back to that ignorance piece, and I think something else that that is easy to do when you have anxiety, which we all know holds hands with depression and bipolar, is the avoidance piece. And you know, without going into great detail, I had a $3,000 lesson, and I don't mean it was a $3,000 fine. It was, I would have received $3,000 had I addressed this sooner. But how I got to it was asking family members, asking folks who were into finance. And I finally called the right person and took care of the situation. And that was a huge lesson. And well, avoidance across the board is always such a facing things you don't want to face. And when you're someone who, I guess I should say, the amount of energy that I spent avoiding the situation, it was more than when I actually just made the right call. And I think this happens all the time. It happens with, it can happen with not being able to pay rent, not being able to pay bills. You mentioned there earlier about being able to call and get payment plans set up. And these are all really possible things. And you can't find out about them until you call. And I think that is one of my favorite points of your presentation, of finding the right information. I didn't know you could get a free cell phone. You just told me, and maybe other people, maybe that's new information to them as well. But I want to remind everybody that there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you have questions, we would love to answer them. We have a few minutes if anybody has any questions. If not, I have a bunch of questions that I could keep asking. Well, this is one. So when someone, sometimes when someone's experiencing mania, they may go on a spending spree or buy a car or buy an expensive vacation. Can you talk a little bit about what are ways people can set something up to avoid that?
So that's a great question, Maria. And thank whoever asked that question, thank you. one of the things that technology has done for us as in this world is that it has given us a lot of checks and balances. And I think one of the key things we as loved ones need to do whenever we have family members who are prone to these kinds of activity is to put in place a check and balance. So one of the things you can do is go to each of this person's bank account actually, and actually set up a alert to a number of people who you might choose to, that if they spend, let's say you can pick a number, $500 or more at any one go, you would get an alert that says, hey, $500 or more have been spent on your account. Is this appropriate? Is this the right expense? And you get an opportunity to say yes. And if this is something that you don't agree with, or this is something that shouldn't have happened, you have an opportunity to call either the bank or the credit card, because it happens for both, and you can stop that actual action. So if there's anybody who goes on these kinds of spending spree, you can actually protect them from themselves by having these alerts set up in time for you to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Someone asked how they could get a free cell phone again. I think if someone had a good question, how do I prioritize paying off debt? They're specific, do I do student loans or credit cards first? But maybe just a quick bit about how to prioritize debt.
So I have a much broader and deeper presentation about debt for you, but what I would say is that there's good debt and there's bad debt. Things about credit card, the thing about credit cards is that credit cards are, quite frankly, bad debt. If you need to choose between a credit card and a student loan that you need to pay off, please, I beg you, pay off your credit card first, second, third, fourth, all the time. Because there's something, whenever you don't pay your credit card, here's what happens. There is what is called an APR that kicks in whenever you're late. And that APR is not 5% or 2%. Depending on the credit card that you're working with, you're talking about 30%, 24%. These are big numbers. And these numbers are compounding interest numbers that are happening for you. So this is how people wonder, how is it I borrowed, $2,000 and I end up paying back $50,000? That does happen because you pay the minimum, that just keeps escalating over time. So I would encourage everyone, pay off credit card debts first and foremost. And to address the issue in a much more fundamental way, don't treat your credit cards as cash. You should treat your credit card as a spend that you're going to make, but that you already have the money to cover. You're basically just substituting the credit card for the dollars you're going to end up paying anyway. So in other words, you're not taking out a loan against yourself. You have the money, but you're just using your credit cards, because credit cards helps you to build your credit profiles, right? But try not to use it as an ATM machine. That's kind of how I'd like to say it. That's the real first priority. If you don't treat your credit cards as an ATM machine, then you're better off going forward. But I was a college kid, so I know what happens in college, and I knew what happened when they gave me the credit cards. They said, sign up for this row and you're going to get all these perks. And I was so happy to have a card that I just signed up for it. I just did. And they never said to me, oh, by the way, if you don't pay off your bills at the end of the month, you're going to get a 24% hit. They never said that. I remember they never said that to me. That's not what they said. They gave me a free t-shirt, and I was happy for the free t-shirt because it showed my school spirit, and it had my credit card, had the school logo on it, so I felt proud.
Yes, and related, someone, mentioned, how do I raise my credit score? Related to that, I finally got a decent enough credit score that I could get a credit card and only use it I pay it every month. I pay it down every month. I use it just as you mentioned. And because of that, my credit score has gone up, and obviously not missing any school loan payments, etc. So that is one way. I think we have, let's do one more question. Oh, well, this is really, what are your thoughts on using credit card with reward points for daily expenses, not once? They put in parentheses, he put in parentheses, to take advantage of the rewards benefit, paying it off all each month. That's exactly what I do. I guess, Ro, do you have thoughts on that?
So I think the key point to make here is that there's a way to use credit cards that makes it works for you. So my credit cards, I tend to use a lot for travel, and I get all kinds of reward points for gas and groceries and hotels. And I got to be honest with you, I love the idea of when I go to a hotel, and because I'm a platinum card person, I get all these they give me this nice gift basket in my room. I get to upgrade my room. I love that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the key here is every month I pay my credit card bill in full. That's what I tend to do. So there's nothing wrong with using your credit card in that way to get all these reward points. But what you should do is don't let the reward points disguise that it still is a credit card that you need to manage in a very proactive manner.
Yes, because if you miss that, 24% adds up really, really fast.
Very, very quickly.
I think we have time for one more question. Do you have any recommendations for online high yield savings account? That seems specific. I don't know if you have any information.
You're right. That's a very specific question. So online high yield savings account. Here's the frank reality. Interest rates right now for savings accounts, they're next to nothing. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of cash out there. So the banks have absolutely no reason to offer good rates. It's not just the bank's reason. It's because there's so much money out there that it really is not practical to offer an incentive to have more money. It's a reality that's out there. However, what I would say is that if you have an online account and you're going to do an online account, one of the better online accounts out there that I believe offer you, because it's small increments, is Capital One savings account. They actually do give you a decent saving because they are in a business which is mostly focused on online business. Any business that is more online driven is always going to really afford you better savings rate. The question though is, what do you consider high yield? Because there's no high yield savings accounts right now. If you're looking to get into a high yield savings account, that's a bit of a misnomer, because the rates that are offered right now are not very high yield right now.
Okay. Would you mind stop sharing your screen and I will share mine so I can give some contact information. Ro is very generous, and he has, if anybody has questions that they want him to follow up with, he is offering up his contact information. Here we go. And of course, if anybody wants any more information on the Wellness Wheel, there we have podcasts on financial wellness. We have worksheets, and of course, the whole wellness wheel that, again, you're looking at your overall wellness, which is financial and physical. Please go to dbsalliance.org/wellness wheel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Ro, especially for all your knowledge. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your leadership summit. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ro.